What's up guys, Jody and Bryson here again. In today's video, I want to talk about how vulnerability changed my life. Now the reason that I want to talk about vulnerability is because I get a lot of men talking to me, messaging me, have a lot of conversations in my Facebook group and online. And what I notice is that a lot of men really struggle when it comes to sharing their emotions and what's going on for them. And that leads to various different problems, including addiction to porn, addiction to drugs, addiction to alcohol. It causes men to feel very pressured and feel like the only way to go about being feeling powerful and good enough is to match up to society's expectations of what is success by focusing so much on career and on status and having all of these this fancy lifestyle, fancy life. And what I notice is that a lot of these men are actually extremely unhappy. And so in today's video, I wanted to jump on. I wanted to talk a bit about how vulnerability changed my life, and hopefully it inspires some of you guys out there to start sharing what's going on for you, to start talking about your feelings, to start experiencing your feelings, and to go and get support and the help that you need to move forward in that. So a little bit of a background story is that in my childhood, things weren't necessarily that easy for me. My dad left my family home when I was 3 years old. There was a lot of arguments and conflict for me growing up in my family home. My childhood best friend decided to stop being friends with me, and getting attached to certain girls as well, and having my heart broken, and all of this stuff was stuff that really deeply affected me because I've always been a very emotional, sensitive kind of guy. And as I grew older, I started to push down that pain because I didn't feel like I had anyone there for me, anyone who could listen, anyone who would really understand what it was that I was going through. And at the same time, I've always been someone who's been very driven and ambitious. I never had a strong masculine role model for me, so I always looked to people in the movies, people like James Bond and superheroes and that sort of thing, and I started to believe that I was a superhero and that I didn't need anyone else. I could do it all on my own, because that's the message that we're sent by these characters in these movies, and that can be inspiring to a point. It helped me to get through university, helped me to improve myself, improve my way of communicating, to improve the way that my mind was working. But what it didn't really do was help me emotionally. It didn't help me to heal from the past. It didn't help me to develop strong emotional bonds with the people around me. So I was feeling very alone and very isolated. And it all kind of came to a head when I walked out of the job that I was in. I was working in a restaurant, and this guy, one of the waiters, was constantly angry, frustrated, we're not speaking to people very nicely. Um, and he was, allowed just to get away with behaving like that. And that made me feel really angry and frustrated, and made me feel like I wasn't being protected properly in the workplace. Um, so I decided to walk out of that job, and didn't care really about the consequences for my finances. All I cared about was protecting my mental health. And after speaking some of my colleagues about it, what I noticed is that they were a lot less affected than what I was. Um, and that made me realize that, firstly, that I'm very sensitive, but also that I did have a lot of pain from my childhood that I didn't really deal with. And so when that situation was arising at work, I was taking things very personally, and I was getting very emotionally triggered on the inside, but I was still trying to remain like this cool, calm, collected character that we're all kind of told is the pinnacle of being a man. So I went through that stage, and it basically turned into a full on breakdown. I started to look at myself, I started to reflect on myself, and I just let it all, all the pain in. And I must have spent every single day of that 2-3 week period, after leaving work, bawling my eyes out, just crying over all of the stuff that had happened that I hadn't released, I hadn't processed, I hadn't let go of. And that's when I started to see a counsellor. So I saw a counsellor for 12 weeks, and it was hard for me to open up and to be emotional in front of my counsellor. Um, Still to this day, it's not something that I'm particularly amazing at in terms of being emotionally open. I can be emotionally open with a few people in my life, which is a blessing, but it's still something that I'm very much working on and working towards. But what really I benefited from going to counselling was being able to just speak to someone about what had happened to me, and for it to be less heavy on me, and I didn't necessarily get emotional during my counselling sessions, but the weight that was lifted off me made a huge difference to how I was feeling emotionally outside of counselling. It was a freeing and liberating feeling. So I guess the point that I wanted to get to was that if you're in that position where you're feeling alone and you're feeling trapped, and you feel like you've got all of this pressure around you, and you feel like you can't be yourself, stop looking for external fixes for that. Stop looking for people to validate you and accept you and tell you how amazing you are. Stop trying to get tons of likes and followers on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all of that stuff. Stop trying to have a really fancy lifestyle and make tons of money and just keep trying to make more and more money, because none of that stuff is going to help you to feel better inside. The only thing that's going to help you to feel better on the inside is by speaking about your problems, is about finding someone that you trust to open up to and to express what's going on in your heart. And that realization for me has allowed me to become so much more emotionally free, that I can connect a lot easier with people now. I'm not scared to show my vulnerable side. And it doesn't mean that I'm crying all the time. It doesn't mean that I allow myself to get angry and irritated all the time. It doesn't mean any of that. It doesn't mean that I just that you suddenly become someone who has no impulse or emotional control. That isn't what vulnerability is about. Vulnerability is about letting people in when you need it. All right. And I think at the same time, it's important to work on being strong and to work on being stoic and independent and owning your shit and not feeling sorry for yourself, having a pity party, and all of that other stuff. So I'm not for 1 minute saying that you should be this emotional, sentimental wreck of a person. I'm just saying that when you need that support, it's okay. You're a human being, first and foremost, before you're a man. Hope the advice in that video helps. If you do want to support in being a more vulnerable man, then I'll link my Facebook group, The Vulnerable Man, in the comments below. Comment, share, subscribe. I appreciate you all.